so generous. I'm really moved by your welcome, by your enthusiasm and support. I have very good friends here in Roanoke. They're over here, and I have some out here too. But I want to thank you for your support and how much you care about this election. I want to also thank the Marvin family. What an extraordinary thing they have done in building this here. I'm glad there are no keys in the truck behind me, but nonetheless, I'm glad that I see these trucks going across America, carrying products all over America, and during a time when the housing market was in such distress, for them to be able to maintain their business and maintain their employee base is an extraordinary thing. And their involvement in this election and recognizing the importance of this election in setting a course for the coming decades is very touching. And it was powerful to listen to Jake and to speak with his sister Susan. The two of them are leaders, the top two people in their company. They're making products for America, and they and their family and all the people who work at Marvin, they did build this. And it's incredible. And I want to thank this guy. He wants to downgrade his title from governor to senator, but I'm nonetheless ready to make sure we do that. So I need to make sure that you elect this man as the next United States Senator from Virginia. I need him. We've got to have him. Thanks also to Congressman Goodlatte. Appreciate his leadership and support here. He's telling me that you're knocking on doors and making calls for him and for me, and that makes a real difference, and I appreciate it. How many of you have voted already or have knocked on a door or made a call? Wow, that is great. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Keep on battling. This is a critical place for us. Turnout here makes an enormous difference, and this election makes a big difference, and you understand that. This election will have enormous consequence. I also want to thank Ricky Skaggs for entertaining you before we got here. Done quite a job. He's been traveling with us around the country and helping us at events, and it's just marvelous to have folks in the entertainment community who are out there singing and performing to make sure people are coming and listening to our message. Just a note also about the tragedies of the last several days. As you know, the extraordinary storm that hit a great part of the Atlantic coast did not hit as hard here as it might have, but across other parts of the country it hit very hard. A lot of people lost their lives. A lot of families have been devastated. A lot of homes have been lost and property lost, and our hearts go out to the people who are suffering. Please make sure if you have an extra dollar or more than that, to send it along to the Red Cross or Salvation Army or some other relief effort to make sure that we show the world and show our neighbors how much we care. We love those in need. Now, there are other things that you could do this morning besides come listen to a couple of political folks. And you're here, I believe, because you recognize that this is an election of consequence. That the choice that gets made on November 6th will not just set the course for 4 years, but in fact will have an impact on America for many years to come, for a generation at least. This is a very critical time to decide what America is going to be, what kind of life you're going to live in your homes and in your families. I happen to believe that the choice you make will have enormous consequence. For a senior who's perhaps needing the care of a specialist, if he or she makes a call to the doctor, and if Obamacare is installed and the president's reelected, why, when making that call, you're most likely going to have the receptionist come back and say, sorry, we're not taking any more Medicare patients. Because the president's cutting Medicare to pay for Obamacare. And for people in your 40s and 50s, these are supposed to be your high earning years. Does it feel like that right now? There are just too many people having a hard time making ends meet. As a matter of fact, the median income in America has dropped by $4,300 over the last 4 years. So now you're earning $4,300 a year less than you were 4 years ago. And gasoline prices, they've gone up $2,000 per family. And then health insurance costs, they've gone up $2,500 a family. Middle income people in America have really been squeezed. And so people recognize this is an election that will make a real difference. Now, the president's proposal in a setting like this is to continue on the same road. He has a campaign slogan which is forward. I saw the signs out front, forward. I think forewarned is a better word. I mean, do you want 4 more years like the last 4 years? I mean, do you want 4 more years where 23 million Americans are struggling to have a good job? Do you want 4 more years where earnings are going down every year? Do you want 4 more years of trillion-dollar deficits in Washington? How about 4 more years of gridlock in Washington? Look, there's no question in my view that we really can't have 4 more years like the last 4 years. I know the Obama folks are chanting 4 more years, 4 more years. But our chant is this: 5 more days. 5 more days is our chant. You know, we're going to have to come up with a better slogan tomorrow, or a different one at least. Now, I know the president's been trying to figure out some way to suggest he's got some new ideas. Because with all these people out of work, with 3 million more women in poverty today than when he took office, with 15 more million people on food stamps than when he took office, he's got to find something to suggest it's going to be better over the next 4 years. And so we came up with an idea last week, which is he's going to create the Department of Business. I don't think adding a new chair in his cabinet will help add millions of jobs on Main Street. I mean, unfortunately, what you've seen before your very eyes is a campaign that keeps on shrinking and shrinking and shrinking to smaller things. I mean, he's been out talking about how he's going to save Big Bird, and then playing silly word games with my last name, and then or first, and then attacking me day in and day out. Attacking me doesn't make an agenda, doesn't get people back to work. We don't need a Secretary of Business to understand business. We need a president who understands business, and I do. And that's why I'll help be able to get this economy going. This isn't the time for small measures. This is a time for greatness. This is a time for big change, for real change. And that's why, just as your next senator said, this is a time where from day one, he's going to make changes. I'm going to make real changes. I'm going to get this economy going. From day one, we're making changes. Let me tell you some of the things we're going to do. We've got five critical things I want to do to get this economy going. And the governor mentioned one of them, and that is energy. I want to take full advantage of our oil, our coal, our gas, our nuclear, our renewables. And I know that you know that when we have more plentiful energy, and we can have North American energy independence within 8 years, what that means, of course, is lower prices at the pump and lower costs for fuel at your home. It also means jobs, and that's the reason I mention it, because it's not only jobs in the energy sector, coal and gas and oil, but it's also jobs in manufacturing, like right here, because there's a lot of energy used in the lumber products arena, and in making fiberglass, and in assembling these products and manufacturing them. When energy costs are lower, then we're able to create more manufacturing jobs. And that's why it's so critical. We have this ace in the hole, this energy, and the president's been stalling on this for the last 4 years. I won't stall. We're going to unleash the power of our energy resources and get America working again. Number two, we're going to open more trade. Trade works for us. We're a very productive people. We make more stuff per person in America than almost any other nation on earth, more than any of the other large nations. And because of our productivity, opening up new markets for us to sell goods to creates jobs and higher income. So I want to open up more markets, particularly in Latin America, where we have natural language advantages, time zone advantages. Latin America's economy is almost as big as China's. So I want to open up more trade. But by the way, if nations cheat and China has not played by the rules, they're going to have to be held accountable. We can't let them steal jobs through unfair trade practices. Number three is good training for people who need training. And by the way, we also need to have great schools for the coming generation. Look, our schools have fallen off from the very top, and now they're in the bottom third or bottom quarter. That's unacceptable. It's time for us to make sure we put our kids and their parents and the teachers first, and the teachers' union's going to have to go behind. Number four, we've really got to do something to create jobs that may not be immediately connected in people's minds with jobs, and that relates to the federal budget and the deficit. You see, if you're an entrepreneur thinking about starting a business like the Marvin family did in the early 1900s, or if you're a big company thinking of expanding, you have to ask yourself, is America on the road to Greece? Are we on the road to economic crisis, as you're seeing in Europe and Italy and Spain and other parts of the world? If we keep on spending $1 trillion more than we take in, America's going to be, in fact, in that kind of circumstance down the road. And so we're going to have to make sure that people who would think about investing here are inclined to do so, because we're able to deal with our great challenges fiscally. And so that means I'm going to do something that's been spoken about for years but hasn't been done, and that is I'm going to cut federal spending, I'm going to cap it, and finally get us on track to a balanced budget. And number five, we have to champion small business. We have to help small businesses grow and thrive. That's where jobs come from. And there are a couple of ways to do that. One, we got to make sure the regulators understand their job is not just to catch bad guys, but also to encourage the good guys. We need regulation, but they need to be up to date. And regulators have to see businesses like this as their friends and encourage them and support them. And by the way, we can't tax them to death. I was with a business person in St. Louis, 4 employees in the electronics business. He said that he and his son calculated how much money they send to the government every year out of their business. And he put down how much for the federal income tax, and then the federal payroll tax, and then the state income tax, and then real estate tax, and then gasoline tax. And it was over half of what they made. And he said, think about this. You start a business, your chance of success is not even as good as 50-50. Most small businesses won't make it. So it's a risky thing to do. And then if you're successful, government wants more than half of what you make. And so a lot of people decide not to build businesses. Today, we're at the lowest level of new business startups in 30 years. So I want to change this dynamic and make business recognize they have a friend in Washington, not a foe. And I believe if we do that, we do those 5 things and get those 5 done, we're going to create 12 million new jobs and more take-home pay. Now, by the way, the governor also mentioned something about my record as governor in terms of reaching across the aisle. Recognize, to get those 5 things done and to get America strong again, we have to stop the dividing and the attacking and the demonizing. We've got to reach across the aisle, bring in good Democrats with good Republicans, and finally do the people's business and put the politics behind. I will do that. They're very different futures than mine. When people think about this election, when you talk to your friends about who they're going to vote for, and I want you to do that, find at least one person who voted for Barack Obama and convince them to come vote for me instead, and for George Allen as well. And when you go through that, you can ask them these questions and say, look, if the president's reelected, we're going to have $20 trillion in debt at the end of 4 years, and America's going to be closer to the economic crisis that you're seeing in Europe. If I'm elected, we're going to get America finally on track to a balanced budget. If the president's reelected, you're going to cut Medicare by $716 billion to pay for Obamacare. If I'm reelected, excuse me, if I'm elected, I guess let me strike that. When I'm elected, we're going to restore that funding to Medicare, and also we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare so your premiums don't go up by $2,500 a year. If the president's reelected, I don't care how much he talks about liking all of the above when it comes to energy, because I know what he means by all of the above. He means all the energy that comes from above the ground, all right? Wind and solar. I like wind and solar too, but I also like the energy that comes from below the ground. Oil, coal, and gas, and we'll get it under my administration. I can also tell you this, if the president were to be reelected, you're going to see high levels of unemployment continue and stalled wage growth, if any wage growth at all, just like we've seen over the last 4 years. We know something about the past. We've seen what his policies have produced. The only way to get this economy going is the kind of bold change I've described, real change from day one. With those 5 steps, that'll get this economy going, create jobs, rising take-home pay. We'll have a very different future when I get elected with your help. Now, I want you to know, I'm confident about the future. I'm optimistic. I think our future is going to be brighter than the past. I know we've had a glorious past as a nation. I know we're going through tough times right now. Sometimes we tend to think that what we're in is going to always be the way it'll be. But you know what? It's going to change. We need real change. For real change, we're going to have to take a different course. And I think that's what Americans are going to do on November 6th. And I believe that one of the things that will drive this country forward is the character and heart of the American people. That's where my confidence comes from. We're a patriotic, hardworking, innovative, creative, risk-taking, business-starting, education-seeking people. It's who we are. And I have throughout my life seen some of the great qualities of the human spirit in the American people that I've come to know. There's some stories I love to tell that describe something about the American heart. I was a leader in the Boy Scouts of America some years ago, and I was at a court of honor. A court of honor is where we give out Eagle Scout awards and other awards to Boy Scouts, and I was at a table, a Formica table at the end of at the gymnasium at the end of the table next to the American flag. And the person who was speaking at the microphone was the scoutmaster from Monument, Colorado. And he said their scout troop wanted to have a special flag. So they bought an American flag, gold tassels around it. They sent it off to be flown above the Capitol. Then when it came home, they said, hey, I wonder if we can have it go up on the space shuttle. So they contacted NASA. NASA agreed. He said, you can't imagine the pride of our boys, watching from their classrooms, seeing the Space Shuttle Challenger launch on the TV screen, and then they saw it explode on the TV. And he said he called NASA a couple of weeks later and said, have you found any remnant of our flag? And they hadn't. He said he called every week, month after month, still nothing. And then he was reading an article in the paper about some of the debris from the Challenger disaster, and it mentioned a flag. And so he called NASA, and they said, in fact, we have a presentation to make to your boys. NASA came out, presented them with a plastic container, and he said, we opened it up, and there was our flag in perfect condition. And he said, that's it on the flagpole next to Mr. Romney here at the end of the table. And I reached over and grabbed the flag and pulled it out, and it was as if electricity was running through my arm. Because I thought of the people in our space program who've taken risk, put themselves in harm's way for learning, for pioneering, for knowledge, for us, for their fellow citizens. Think of the men and women in our military, as the governor indicated, who serve our nation and put themselves in harm's way for us. There's a verse in one of our national hymns I enjoy most. It's the hymn is America the Beautiful, and the verse says, "O beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life." Thanks to our veterans and all those that serve. Thank you also. Thank you also to people of America's national character that serve in other ways, that serve in ways to exemplify something about our American spirit, and that is that we live for things bigger than ourselves. It seems to be part of our national character. We're not entirely focused on us, we're focused on things around us. We care about our families, our churches and synagogues. We care about our communities, our schools, our country. It's part of what America is. I've seen it in so many ways. My sister is a hero to me. They say that to be a hero, you don't have to be larger than life, just larger than yourself. My sister has 8 children. She's now in her 70s. Her husband passed away a few years ago. Her 7 oldest children are all married with kids of their own. Her 8th child is Down syndrome. Jeffrey's now 43, and I've watched Lynn throughout those 43 years do everything in her power to give him a fulfilled and abundant life. She's a hero because she gives of herself to someone else she loves. I think of all the single moms across America, yeah, who are in many cases struggling, scraping by a bit to make sure they have enough money to put a good meal on the table at the end of the day for their kids. I think of all the dads and moms working 2 jobs right now to make sure that their kids will be able to have the kind of clothes the other kids at school have so they won't stand out. Think of all the parents this Christmas who, after all these tough years, 4 very difficult years, are saying we can't exchange gifts with one another. We're instead going to make sure we can give enough to our kids for a great Christmas for them. It's part of who we are as a people. We have very full hearts. There was a TV show some years ago you may have seen with a fictional football team. And when this football team would leave the locker room to go out onto the field, they would touch a sign on the doorway. And it said full heart. It said this: clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. This November, I know you people in this room have very clear eyes. You know the consequence of what this election means. You have full hearts, and we can't lose. We need you, Virginia. We've got to take back America. I'm counting on you. Georgia's counting on you. Let's make sure we keep America the hope of the earth. Thank you so very much.